Good afternoon. Welcome to the Batman Show, featuring the greatest people on all YouTube land.
And me.
Sounds about right.
And me. How are you gentlemen today?
Good. Very busy, but good. Can't complain. That's a classic thing. You got to do that every show now.
keep forgetting.
Every show.
I have my iPad just down here, and I always forget the volume's on. But apart from that, I'm fine. Thank you.
Good. Eric, I'm curious. What's the temperature in American speak in Canada today?
Let's see. What's here? I'll get it. You talk amongst yourselves for a minute. It is 28. It's 28 Celsius, 82 Fahrenheit here in Kitchener. We are expecting rain tomorrow, but it's it's a cloudy day. The blue skies are going away right now, so I'm not sure. They say that we might have thunderstorms later tonight. So there's your AccuWeather report for the week.
Okay. We're back in the 90s here.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was pretty bad on the weekend. I have to admit, we couldn't take the dog out for a walk until it got dark, and even that, it was still sweltering. So, but yeah.
I'm sure it's raining in Scotland.
Well, no, it did rain briefly this afternoon, but it's been about 17 degrees centigrade, whatever that is in American speak. But it's now 14 degrees outside, and it's
62 Fahrenheit.
What's that in Fahrenheit?
62. That's pretty chilly. That's nice. It's pleasant.
Yeah, it is pleasant.
I hate both of you. Let me walk in the chat real fast. Big Al presents. He says, "Have a great show." Things of the themes. That's cool. Victor Fields in the house. David Pensack says the Batmobile is tuned into the show. That's good to know. Guest is in the house with his cabbages again. Anders is here. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you, Mr. Anders? And Victor, is it evening where you're at? Are you in the UK? Okay, cool.
I think Anders is in Sweden.
Where's Victor at?
Victor's London, I think.
UK? All right, cool.
Yep. Cool. Is he getting ready for that John Williams interview on Classic FM with the world's greatest presenter, Andrew Collins?
Is it a good interview? I couldn't get it to play on my end.
It's going live at 8 p.m. their time. So what's that? That should be now.
I couldn't get it to play.
Yeah, now
no, it's 55 minutes time.
Okay.
I've got it set up. I've got it set up to record. So
yeah. I really hope it's not the same old, like, you know.
Tell me about mini Sophie Mutter. Oh, isn't she amazing? Yes, I love your collaborations with her. Wow. I hear you're doing Indiana Jones.
Only wrote 2 notes for Jaws. What did Steven Spielberg think about that? Oh, tell me all about Maurice Murphy and his first time playing with the London Symphony Orchestra. Do something different, please. Please. But they won't. It's Classic FM. It's for the general public. So
yeah, but you know, you want somebody to go in there just to do something that they haven't heard of before and go, I hear you're a bit of a bitch with the musicians. So just something a bit.
I would totally be up for that. I would. I mean, you know what? I would talk about, his troubles with the Boston Pops.
Tell me about that time you quit during the Christmas concert. I'd like to hear more about that.
I mean, it's 90 years. Let's get something new. And I mean, that's what I'd be interested in. I mean, whether or not he remembers those stories, but it'd be interesting to hear about other projects and why he chose them, and working with other directors other than George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. I mean, that's where, and even the way he goes about creating his concert music, why is it so different than his than his film music. You know, what's his approach? Well, what's he trying to say? What's he trying to do? And that's where I would be way more interested in hearing an interview of that sort, especially with John Williams at 90, instead of just the same old stuff that you're getting each. I mean, you could read it right now. I mean, there was an interesting article, I think it was on The Guardian today, where John Williams, I think for the first time, has talked about wanting to score a James Bond movie. That's interesting. That would be interesting. I mean, so that's this type of stuff where, yeah, what would you like to score? You know, you still have, or what didn't you get a chance to score? That'd be another one. It's like, were you assigned anything that you didn't get a chance to do? You know, that I'm interested in that deeper dive. But...
Do you regret not doing Batman in '89?
And that would be an interesting question. That would be.
And he was keen to do the last two Harry Potters as well. And,
right.
You know, but you know, they went with
Alexander
Desplat.
Yeah.
So I thought.
So those are the type of questions where, I mean, you can start with kind of some basic questions, but man,
go for the blood after
you got a chance to really talk to somebody and really hopefully open them up and have some new information brought forward. And that's where I'm hoping that he goes. But based on everything I've heard from, I mean, and I hope Collins doesn't go down that pun route that he usually does on his show, because it's next to impossible to listen to a show without cringing really, really hard. So yeah, I mean, I was like,
Superman 2, what happened there? Tell us about the fight.
I would be interested in I'm not sure whether I want as much dirt, but I'd be interested in just any little tidbit of a recording session or interesting. Like, did you know, Richard Donner really come out and almost blow a take on the Superman sessions? Whether he remembers that or not, but yeah, that's what I would like to hear. I mean, if I was interviewing him, I mean,
Big Al asked, what would be the one question you would ask him? You got one question.
Oh, wow. That is a good question. And that I mean, I'd have to think about that. If it's just one, I don't want to, you know, a good question right there. It's like, why don't you want the Sugarland Express?
Yeah.
I would love to go in there and just, you know, say, you know, hi Mr. Williams, my name's Ian, I'm going to ask you a question, and then just come out and go, do you like cheese?
True. What's your favorite food? Do we know that? What do you like to eat? What do you do on days when you're not composing? Right? Like,
he's always composing.
Do you have downtime? What's your favorite television show? What's your favorite movies? Do we know those things?
Watch movies.
But that would be, it's like, what's your favorite book? You know, before you were just constantly writing, what was your life like? You know, tell us about the early days of, you know, being in your own band and playing with some of these masters and whatever. That would be a lot of fun.
Do you feel responsible for your son's drug use?
Oh, God.
That's hard hitting right there.
It is. I mean, he's not the type of guy that's going to throw someone under the table, but I'm kind of interested in like, what's the everyday life of John Williams? And that would be fascinating. So, but yeah. Oh, hey, someone mentioned that they got Prince Valiant.
I think that was
David Pensack.
David. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's awesome. And did you get it for a good price? Is it still in print? Sorry, I'm gonna bring up my pop shield. I'm just popping like mad on this microphone. Yeah, I'm wondering, is it still in print? If it is, everybody should have it. Oh, it's 20. Oh, it's out of print. Got it.
You got it for a good price.
Well, good. I'm happy for you. It's a wonderful score. If there was anything that I wanted re-recorded, I mean, I would spend money on a re-recording of Prince Valiant. That would be fun to hear it that way. I mean, especially after hearing Gerhardt's 10-minute suite, you're like, wow, the possibilities, just the way that this score can open up with a modern recording would be delightful. But it wasn't a very big movie. But it's one of the first comic book films. So maybe that'll interest comic book fans. Or at least it was a comic strip, I think. I'm not sure whether it was a comic book. So yeah. So what's the topic for today?
I thought we could talk James Newton Howard for a moment or two.
All right. How do you want to do this?
Who's that?
James Newton Howard, the film composer.
Is he another one of those composers you only have one album of?
No, I've got a few James Newton Howards. So
Okay.
I have them stacked here as well.
How do you want to attack this?
Show them off, my friend. I'd have to go dig all mine out.
It's not many. That's them
Okay.
there.
Well, I see 2 or 3 Versera bands in there and some Sony classicals.
One of the Vrez ones is one that you sent me.
From James Newton Howard?
Yeah, they're happening.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
No, you honestly you did. And
Okay.
the other
I
one.
mean, I'm not going to fight you about it.
No, I don't want to fight. Well, unless you want to. But the other one was, and I'm not a huge fan of this one, was the Bourne Legacy, which I just thought was a bit.
Yeah, it's tough to follow up John Powell on something like that.
Yeah, but we'll get to some of these other ones anyway. So, but what was the first score that brought James Newton to Howard to your attention? I thought, oh, this guy's really good.
That's a good question. And I think really early on in the days when I realized that there were more people like myself out there in chatting with like film music fans. I was still in college, and I was talking with someone who was running a John Williams website, and it might be the early version of John Williams, the JW Fan. And I forgot the guy's name, but we used to chat on and off, I think during my second year of college. So I'm about 20, 21. And he mentioned Waterworld. And I remember hearing the score in context. And to be totally honest, the first time I heard it, I thought it was a bit cheesy. But then he mentioned that, and I think I was doing a show on like great action scores, and he says, you have to pick up Waterworld. I'm like, oh, okay. I think I remember seeing a copy in one of the record stores in the mall, and so I went and got it. And I think that might have been my first exposure to James Newton Howard on CD, and just falling in love with that score. Yeah, and it's both presentations I think are actually really good. I mean, if you can't afford the La La Land edition, I mean the original presentation is really, really good. But yeah, I think that's what it was. And then just out from that, I was like, wow, this is so great, and this is such a great sound, such a unique voice as well. And then I got the Wyatt Earps, and then of course, in 2000, when he got into his Disney phase, it was what a remarkable time to be alive. To hear Dinosaur Atlantis and Treasure Planet like back to back to back year after year was incredible.
What about for you, Ian? Do you remember the first time you noticed?
And it was World that made me sit up and go, oh. I think Wyatt Earp was before, wasn't it? It was the year before. Was it 94? 93, 94, Wyatt Earp?
94.
Yeah, Wyatt Earp was 94, yeah.
94. Well, I didn't actually see Wyatt Earp until after Waterworld, so it would have been Waterworld for me as well. And I just thought it was fantastic. But it was a couple of years before I managed to get the soundtrack for it. Probably about 96, 97, that I actually got the first CD, the initial CD release. So yeah, Waterworld, and then Dinosaur after that was. Oh, they'll release a 3-disc one soon, I'm sure of it. But I'm quite happy with the La La Land 2-disc at the moment.
Well, were you talking
What
about
about you,
Wyatt
Daniel?
Earp, Daniel?
Yeah, the Wide Earp. You got the 3-disc Wide Earper?
Oh,
Yeah.
right. Okay. No,
No?
I've only got the.
It's still a good
That's,
album.
you know,
It
it's something.
is. It just,
It is, yeah.
I'm.
Yeah.
It's too bad the end credits weren't on that album, or else that probably would be a perfect album.
Oh, strong words, my friend.
Right? It would be. I mean, the three disc set's fine, but as for a listening experience, you put the end credits on that original album, you've got an incredible listen, start to finish. There's no, every cue's a highlight. Every cue.
Although I would encourage you to track down the 3-disc set if
That's
you
the
have
thing
not
with
purchased it.
it's on various kind of watch lists and whatever, but that's the thing with a lot of these expanded releases. Sometimes the original program for the original soundtrack release is sometimes a more manageable, easier listening experience than, you know, having 2 discs or 3 discs where with everything, alternates and everything.
Yeah.
You know, it's great to have that stuff and it's great to listen to, but you don't listen to it in one sitting. Whereas you can take the original Wyatt Earp. You could, I haven't heard the 3-disc one, but you can put that 1 disc on. What is it? Kind of 45 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a good, wholesome listening. Just sit down, listen to the whole thing. Whereas you wouldn't listen to 3 hours of the Wyatt Earp score. Well, you might do.
It is difficult.
In that kind
Well,
of
here's an interesting thing that La La Land could
Yeah.
probably do, and I think Entrada's done this before, and I think even La La Land's done this before. But to re-release this as a 2 CD set. You know, we have the 3 CD set, but on disc 3, it's all alternates and source cues, synth mock-ups, and then there's actually an interesting bonus track where James Newton Howard's giving a speech, and I think his son was born during the composition process for the recording of the score. So it's kind of sweet to hear, but you can get the entire score on 2 discs, and I think that'd be interesting to just re-release it that way. But you're right about the runtime. Disc 1 is 54 minutes and disc 2 is 71 minutes, so that's quite a bit to get through on its own. But I mean, yeah, how long was Wyatt Earp was, I mean, a generous 1 hour and 5 minutes. I mean, a 65-minute presentation. That's not bad, especially for an LA recording, which is, I mean, that could not have been cheap. But you add the end credits. Sorry, it was an hour long because I added the end credits actually. So I'm looking at my iTunes, my iTunes collection. So it is an hour long, and I added the end credits to that presentation myself. But still, 60 minutes, 61 minutes in change is not cheap. But it's still a great presentation. But I think that, I mean, for anybody that wants to get the expanded, it'd be great if La La Land went back and just released the 2 discs, and then I think everybody would be happy at that point.
That's essentially what they did with Star Trek.
Yes, exactly. And you know, Johnny here has something to say where, you know, he doesn't like it when the 3rd disc is the original commercial disc. Here's the thing about that. I like that. Yes, it drives up the price, but you get to hear that original presentation. So for me, and I'm not saying it's for you, Johnny, or even for you, Ian or Daniel, it's my time is very limited. So if I get to hear that original presentation completely remastered as an extra on the disc, that's wonderful. So, you know, the ET original release, not sure whether it's still in print or not, but to hear that presentation, which is a completely different beast compared to the original score, included as part of that La La Land set, and hear it completely remixed, remastered, redone, because it really was a quiet mix on the original album. Just to hear it done with modern mixing and, you know, recording capabilities, it's great to have those, and I think there's a benefit to having them, just to hear how a composer put those albums together back in the day. What I don't like is that, if it drives up the price of a disc, then no, don't do that. But I think that if you're going to do a 2 CD set and then you might have the original album on the third, then maybe price it at a 2 CD set, and the third's it's a bonus. But I don't know how that works and whether the licensing works or whatnot. But I think there's some, it's a different listen. However, I do like it in the liner notes of some albums where they don't include the original album, that will include a sequencing for how you can recreate that on your own. Now, it's tough for anybody who doesn't have a digital collection and anybody just listens to on CD. I mean, you could pre-program it. Who the hell does that to this day?
Nobody.
But yeah, like even Jaws 2. Jaws 2 is a very different presentation on the original album compared to what was released on the Tadlow album. And it's completely different mixes too. The Jaws 2 album sounds very different than the original recording. So yeah. And even some of Goldsmith's original arrangements. I mean, I love The Edge, for instance. The Edge, I think, is one of Goldsmith's best scores, but it also has a very personal connection to me. But I love that. I think it's about a 35-minute presentation that originally came out, and that works for me. So yeah, but I think there's a benefit and a value to it, especially for many maybe younger soundtrack fans that might have missed out on the original release and might find that to be a curiosity. But even for some people like us who might have missed that original release and kind of curious on how that plays compared to the complete score, where, it'd be great if the Wyatt Earp original album presentation was on here, and so that I didn't have to listen to 2 discs and try to get through hours and hours of music. I mean, some people do have time to do that, and I'm not saying that that you should not listen to these scores start to finish over the course of 2 hours. It's great if you have the time to do it, but yeah, there's some times where just a rearrangement of the cues. Like, for instance, another one is Star Trek Generations. I love the fact that they called the end credit cue the overture on the original release and played that as track 1. Now, what that does, and it's something that John Williams does, is it introduces you to all those themes before you even get into the score proper. And I think that, again, it works, like an overture. And so you get to hear those melodies first before you get into the score proper. And I even think that the finale cue from that score is a perfect ending for that score. But that's just a little tiny change that makes the listening experience a bit different. And I'm not one that is always attached to the chronology of the film when I'm listening, with the exception of some, like Empire Strikes Back. I can only listen to that thing from start to finish the way the movie goes. But other times I don't mind a little mix up, just for in a musical way. So that's my long answer to that question.
I would say I enjoy.
I've forgotten what the question was.
the original disc versus the expanded. I prefer listening. I got the Conan the Barbarian set, and I just keep going to the original release to listen to it. Yeah. I do like the entire score. I'm glad I have it, but I don't listen to Conan. I put in the original release like almost every single time.
Yeah. What do you think, Ian?
Yeah, as you say, it's all a matter of time. If you've got the time, and it depends on your mood as well. I think whether you're up to listening to everything. Sometimes you just want a nicely organic listening experience, rather than sometimes if you've got the expanded score, 2 or 3 discs or whatever it is, it can get a bit repetitive and it can get a bit choppy. It doesn't flow. It depends. But you've got the time, and if you're in the right mood for it. But generally speaking, I'm the same as both of you. I will listen to the original soundtrack presentation. If I've got time, if I'm in the kitchen doing something, or if I'm out walking for hours, I'll listen to everything. It just depends on the mood.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, mood completely will dictate some of the things that I listen to, and how much of it I listen to. Like Blade Runner,
yeah,
is impossible for me to just start and not finish the whole thing. I gotta listen to the whole thing. Now, when I'm talking about the whole thing, I'm talking about the By Soundtracks Records re-recording. But that thing from start to finish is just glorious, and I don't want to miss anything. Like one cue goes to the next cue, so
Which
beautiful.
version of Blade Runner is that again?
Sorry, pardon me.
Which version of Blade Runner?
So that's By Soundtracks Records re-recording with
Is that on that massive 4-disc set that came out?
No. This is it actually was released twice. And I'm gonna butcher this guy's name, so I want to make sure I get it right. So it's completely recreated by Edgar Rothermich, and I don't know how he did it, because again, there's no notation for how Vangelis came up with this score, because he performs his music all to picture, right? And so I don't think there's any notation. And so I'm going to put this link in our private chat, and if you want to add it to the YouTube one. But this is a beautiful, beautiful presentation. It's 71 minutes long and about as faithful as you're going to get to a re-recording of all time. And it's amazing that he was able to recreate those sounds. And that's the other thing. To do a complete re-recording of an electronic score, I think was a daunting task, and they pulled it off absolutely brilliantly. So those other releases with all the dialogue and whatever the Blade Runner trilogy means, and the what was that weird symphonic release that came out in the 80s? It was I got this Blade Runner album is my go-to, and it plays it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
I was disappointed with that 3 CD set that came out? Yeah, I'm like,
I don't know the story behind it, but there's something up with Vangelis and his estate or whatever, and the way that they wanted to release it, and then something happened, because I think there was a planned release of the album when the film was released, and so there's a whole story behind that, but I don't know it right now. So the New American Orchestra, that's right. Oh boy, that's not very good. I
think I've got like 2 or 3 versions of that one.
Yeah. So if you don't have BSX, get it, and it's like $15.
Pocket change.
Really, really well done. They've done other Vangelis re-recordings. They did The Bounty. Did they do The Thing? I can't remember. Let me check. Yeah, they have The Bounty. I think that's all they did. I could be wrong, but yeah. Very, very interesting. Yeah, an ambitious task that they pulled off pretty much almost flawlessly.
Ian, go back to showing us your CD collection.
We had Dinosaur. That was the second thing that I really love.
Is that not
my sister showed?
Sorry, what was
this
that?
One.
Is that not in your top 10 for that decade?
That was my favorite score of that year. It would probably be in my top 10 of maybe in the top 10 of that decade. But yeah, it was amazing.
But there's some glorious stuff on that. Some of these are filthy. Just stuff. There we go. Outbreak. That's just the original Varese release, not the. They put out a deluxe one, didn't they?
Correct.
A few years ago. But to tell you what, I haven't listened to that for years. To tell you the truth, I can't really.
Those last 2 tracks are amazing.
All right, I'll revisit that. Yeah, definitely. This is just a grab bag of different ones. There's Maleficent.
Brilliant.
took me years to figure out how to actually say that. I was saying male if male until I heard somebody say it in the film, I think, and then Maleficent. Oh, okay. This one took me years to find, and it was just expensive. But I managed to get it for $7.99. Unbreakable.
I just bought that like 4 a.m.
I don't know why that was.
Oh wow!
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Did you pay a decent price for it?
Under $10.
Good for you.
Which I noticed, like everyone on Discogs wanted like $60 and up, and I'm like, let me go back to eBay, and I think I got the cheapest one on eBay.
Yeah. Good.
It was way early in the morning though, so I hope I paid 10 and not 100.
Checking back out. Yeah, that took me a while to find as well. Sometimes we go through phases here in the UK where sometimes there's loads of these things around, sometimes there's none, and they're really expensive. So I got the two. I've got two of his scores for fun.
Those are fun.
His best work with signs. Yeah, I haven't got signs. I've got it lined up for streaming, but I don't have the actual CD. And my final one is The Postman, which is
excellent. That's
I love that score. Love that score. Yeah. Yeah.
But I agree with I agree with Johnny about Signs. But then again, Signs is in my top 10 of all time film scores. So
all time.
Wow. Yeah. It's just I think it's like number 9. Prince Valiant's 10. Signs is 9. Braveheart's in there. Dance with Wolves is in there. I can't remember what my 6 to 10 is. I'd have to pull it up for you.
I would recommend The Hidden Life for those of you who haven't listened to it.
It's very good.
The Hidden Life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So World War II film. I'm gathering from the trailer. It looks World War II-ish.
So you haven't seen it?
I saw the trailer.
No, you haven't seen it.
And it's got haunting strings in it. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, the other one on my 6 to 10. The Seahawk. Seahawks just ahead of Signs.
That's cool.
And of course, you want to know what rounds up the top 5, right?
Yeah, I'm guessing like number 1 is like a list of like 50 John Williams scores, right?
Birdman, Logic,
number 5.
Raiders, or
well,
Temple Doom.
Okay, so the thing about this list was I included television and video game scores and things of that sort. So the number 5 was Medal of Honor. If I had to pick just another film score to replace Medal of Honor, I would put in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Number 4 is Back to the Future. Number 3 is Cutthroat Island. Number 2 is Empire Strikes Back, and number 1 is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
And Temple Doom and Last Crusade, right?
I didn't want to include more Indiana Jones, but if I had to, it would be like Raiders, Empire, Temple as like my 3 favorite albums that I would bring with me and to Desert Island and be happy, very, very happy. So, but I didn't want to include, like, I could include all the Star Wars, I can include all the Indiana Jones, but yeah. And then the other honorable mention was Conan the Barbarian. So, yeah.
I applaud you for being able to come up with just precisely 10.
Yeah. Your top 10s with 50 choices, right?
Yeah. I'm probably 53.
But I can understand why you do that Birdman Logic thing, because I mean, does your top 10 ever change, Eric, or is that set in stone?
The last time it changed,
because mine's quite fluid.
No, my last time it changed was with Signs. I think I had Fellowship of the Ring on there at one point, and then Signs. I just listened to Signs just repeatedly and saw the movies again. I'm like, yeah, that's it. So like Fellowship would be on a top 15. Batman's in there. I mean that the top 20 probably doesn't change very often either. I'm trying to think of whether like How to Train Your Dragon would probably make my top 20. So that might have been the last one. Maybe Tron Legacy might fit in there somewhere, but I don't think so. I think How to Train Your Dragon would kind of be the last score to enter in a top 20 and change my list. But my list has been steady for many, many years. Yeah, it doesn't. I don't understand. I personally don't understand the fluidity of that sort of thing. I know what I mean. The only ones that might change would probably be Back to the Future and Cutthroat Island and what their places are. But yeah, I mean, all these 10 could be. You just list them alphabetically, and they're all worthy of number one, I think.
So is that Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3, or just
the first one? But I think 3 is exceptional. 3 is an exceptional score. 2 is adequate, and it's very good. It does what it needs to do. Incredibly repetitive, but it needed to do that for the film. But 3, much like the film, was an eye opener. It was like you didn't expect that score to go that way. So, and then that feels like the true sequel score to Back to the Future.
And he came up with a great Western theme for that film as well.
Yeah. And I mean,
Love that.
I remember seeing part 2, and then they showed the trailer right after the to be continued or to be concluded title that came up, and I'm like, what is this? And then they're going to the West. How weird is that? And I'm glad again we didn't have to wait long to get to Back to the Future 3. Because they filmed those things back to back. So yeah, great.
Yeah, I think it was only 6 months that we had to wait.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, Back to the Future 2 came out in the States November, and then the third one came out end of May.
Yeah, it was in
next year.
Yeah, because Back to the Future, 2 was 89, and then Back to the Future 3 was 90. And just in time for the Universal 75th and James Horner's awesome logo music. I remember hearing that for the first time in the theater, it's vivid. My experience of Back to the Future 3 is just so vivid, especially hearing that new Universal theme. I'm like, wow, that's beautiful. Beautiful. I would love to have a recording of that, like a proper recording. I've ripped DVDs and Blu-rays to try to get the best version of that. And I've heard the Vienna recording as well, but I mean, there's nothing like that original recording. It's beautiful, especially the extended version of it. It's so wonderful.
Johnny's got a question for you, I think, Eric.
Yeah,
you can have that.
That was a revelation. I had no idea. I don't think any of us knew that Alan Silvestri had written a score previous or earlier on that was so different to what eventually came out, to the point that even after hearing that version of it, Spielberg, I think, went to Zemeckis and said, we've got to change out Silvestri. This isn't good enough. And so the way that he went back and Silvestri went back and reworked the material, it's almost like hearing, Goldsmith's early material for Star Trek The Motion Picture, which just doesn't seem as fleshed out as what we eventually hear in the film. And that what the 2-disc set also revealed to us was that when John Debney did his suite of Back to the Future with the Royal Scottish National Orchestra, and why some of the cues didn't sound right in orchestration, was because what was handed to John Debney were those earlier versions of the cues. So the skateboard chase is the early version of it, and not what was eventually the official cue that was heard in the movie. And so I thought that was fascinating, and then that made that finally revealed why Debney's suite. I mean, I love Debney's suite. I mean, for having that suite, I mean, that was the only expanded commercial availability of Back to the Future that we had, an expanded version of at least a small expanded version of it. I thought that John Debney was re-recording the whole damn thing, but he didn't. But anyway, yeah, the 2-disc set of that one was just, the second disc was such a surprise. And it's too bad that 2-disc set isn't available to everybody. Although I'm really glad that Back to the Future is, I think, always in print with disc 1, but disc 2, I think everybody should get a chance to hear it. I mean, that's a piece of history.
What's that going for now?
The 2-disc set?
Yeah.
Got me. But
I just have the 1-disc set.
That's a definite collector's item. And I think when we heard 2-disc, I thought maybe we'd hear some alternatives that were just a little bit different. But again, I had no idea that, Silvestri was this close from getting completely rejected based off of that earlier version of the score. It's just fascinating to hear even the clock tower, how that changed drastically. Even the recording itself, the recording became much more tighter with the official score than that alternate version, which sounded a little bit more distant, but it wasn't as powerful as it could have been. And so I'm glad that they stuck with Silvestri and he was able to rework the material. And then, at the end of the day, it's one of the greatest scores ever composed. It's a classic for a reason. And just Silvestri's career took off from there.
Let's just play devil's advocate for a second. If he had been fired.
Yeah.
Oh, you have the 2-disc set?
Yeah. I'm just trying to get pause on it in the track listings.
Yeah, it's almost like the second score that sounds drastically different. I mean, it's similar, but it's not. It's fascinating. But I mean, at least I hope I got my story.
Sometimes they. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, Eric. I was going to say sometimes when they change direction with scoring, they've recorded just a small amount of music, but Silvestri obviously recorded a huge amount of music before. Yeah, there's 37 minutes for the alternate there, the alternate scoring. So that's a lot of music to actually say, look, do it again.
Yeah. There's 37 minutes. Wow. So I would get the digital tracks from Entrada. I then bought the original release. It's still sealed.
What?
How much do you think a sealed copy of this could go for?
Johnny makes a good point. The second disc was the Eric Stoltz version.
Yeah, I didn't realize I still had this thing wrapped up. Holy smokes. Well.
Yeah, Ian was just making fun of me the other day for ripping up my stuff like immediately when I get it.
Like taking the cellophane off?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I did that with didn't I do that with you guys? I ripped open a box set that I still had sealed.
Is that the Star Trek set?
Yeah, probably. Now I don't even know where that Star Trek set is. Oh, there it is. It went down in value. But I'm wondering, what a sealed Back to the Future 2 CD would be. I'm not selling it. I'm not giving that away. No, but
I would imagine quite a lot.
I'd be interested.
But Daniel, we seem to have lost your picture.
Yeah. No, I'm looking something up on Discogs. I didn't think you wanted to see up my nose.
Oh, right, okay.
Back to the Future 2 CD new on eBay. They want only $35. What?
For the 2-disc one?
I don't know. I think that's baloney. Oh, there you go. $200.
Oh, that's more like it.
That sounds about right. New condition. $200. Not bad. But yeah, if you can get a chance to hear that, I mean, here's another reason why I feel like everything should go to digital at least. I mean, there's going to be collectors that want that physical stuff, but then there's people that just want to listen to it. And everybody should have the opportunity to listen to that 2 CD or that second CD. It's fascinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do we want to go back to James Newton Howard, or does anybody else in the chat want to ask some questions? Because I'm open to anything. Going once? Going twice?
Does anybody know the story of why Howard Shore was replaced on King Kong by James Newton Howard? What was the
I can't tell you. I've been sworn to secrecy.
okay.
So a friend of mine, I will just say, has firsthand knowledge of what happened. So it's a weird story. I'd love to tell it one of these days, but I don't think it's my business to say what that is. But it's interesting that you brought that up, because I was thinking about King Kong the other day and just how utterly brilliant that score is. For the short amount of time, what do you have, about 3 weeks to craft that?
Something like that, yeah.
Score. And I mean, I think we all know that. I mean, that's not all James Newton Howard in there, but I mean, he's the guy in charge of putting all that together and getting his team and making sure that's all, written, copied, printed out, and recorded just in time. And but for how complex the music is, and how memorable those themes are, just and how deeply emotional it is, and how exciting it is, it could easily have turned into something just ordinary. But to me, James Newton Howard and his team just kind of went full throttle and wanted to craft something that was brilliant, and that was really, really good, and that lived up to the film. And yeah, I mean, I've heard little bits of Howard Shore, and I think that's what we've all seen on that behind the scenes kind of documentary of Howard Shore working on King Kong. My worries is that I just don't know whether Howard Shore kind of brought the energy to the film that it needed. But that's just yeah. I don't know. I think James Newton Howard was a wise choice to replace him. But that's such a weird thing to have happen between those two who had such an amazing relationship. I mean, it's much like this whole Sam Mendes, Thomas Newman thing that's happening. So, what's going on there? Like, what's happening in these collaborations? Like, are they having fights like Hitchcock and Herman? I mean, at least we're still getting, like Zemeckis and Silvestri are still friends, and poor Silvestri having to score that version of Pinocchio. I mean, don't those trailers look just? I mean, I think they look wretched. They look horrible. They're just. I mean, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio is something I'm really, really fascinated to see. But this remake that Disney's barfing out is
barfed out.
It's bad. It's so bad. And I feel bad for Robert Zemeckis, because there's none of his style or signature is in anything that I'm seeing there. It just looks like flat remade Disney garbage that's made by a committee instead of an auteur. And Zemeckis is, I mean, I don't know whether he's trying to save his career. I mean, he's almost disappeared. And I just kind of wish he'd get back to doing something a bit more like serious, even something smaller that isn't such a spectacle. Because he's just too good to be working on stuff like Pinocchio.
David, what was your question from earlier?
Oh, yeah. What was it? Let's go back. Is that Blade Runner re-recording on CD or on digital? Oh, it's on CD. Yeah, you can buy it straight from So if you look up, search for like Blade Runner BSX, the first link will bring you to Buy Soundtracks, my Shopify store, and CD. And then on top of buying the CD, you get a 24-bit WAV and MP3 files and the PDF of the liner notes and everything along those lines. So it's great value for the $16 that you're going to pay. And I think that was your question.
What was the bug music? Is that from King Kong?
Yeah. That's pretty wild stuff. That's a terrifying sequence.
I didn't really like that film.
You didn't like King Kong?
No.
How come?
I thought it was wonderful.
Hmm.
Maybe it just wasn't my day, but it seemed very violent.
Yeah. You could say that.
Yeah.
I thought it was over long, but I also thought it was very good. I mean, that whole King Kong T-Rex battle that happens in the middle of the picture was incredible. I was on the edge of my seat watching that. And the whole end, I thought, but it was just, it took too long to get to Skull Island. The casting was also, excuse me, the casting was a little weird.
I like Naomi Watts.
Oh, and she was perfect. I think just the rest of the cast was a little weird. And some of the special effects, that whole stampede is really, really off and not good. But then, you contrast that to the King Kong T-Rex Time 2 fight. It's pretty damn good.
What about the Nutcracker from James Newton Howard?
It's okay. It's much like James Newton Howard's career, where a lot of the stuff he writes just seems to be okay with a couple of like master strokes in there. Maleficent is one of those master strokes. I thought it was one of the best scores in the past 10 years. And I put that on my top 20 of the past decade. It's great. And he has some other good ones, but he doesn't have like the collection of great scores every year, like the way he did in the 90s and early to mid 2000s. Like there's films where I think the score should have just shone and been modern day classics, like the Hunger Games or I think he did the Snow White scores.
Yep.
That should have just been brimming with beautiful melodies and wonderful score, and those just kind of came and went. And so, but I mean, then you get Fantastic Beasts, which I thought were utterly delightful. So yeah, his most recent work over the past 10-15 years has been kind of odd for me. But he did last year come out with a couple of dynamite scores. It's either Raya and is it The Last Dragon?
The Last Dragon, yep.
Delightful. And Jungle Cruise was kind of back to that. I mean, it's still not as, let's say, as good as Maleficent or any of his 90s scores, but it still had that, it kind of went back to that classic James Newton Howard sound that I think we were all very much used to, except for the recording was absolute and utter pants. Just one of the most wretched modern recordings I've heard in a really, really long time. And I'm not sure whether that's because it was a COVID recording and they just weren't able to capture it properly, but it sounds dreadful. And it almost made me turn off the album when I listened to it for the very first time, because I couldn't get over how poorly it sounded. But as the year went on and then I saw the score in context, I mean, man, and that was a chore to get through, because I think the film is dreadful. But I think James Newton Howard was one of the best aspects of that movie, and it's a really fun score. That whole suite at the beginning, again, we're talking about album presentation. I love those suites that James Newton Howard offers at the beginning of his album sometimes, and it's just a great way to be introduced to all the major themes in the score. So yeah, he kind of came back to life last year.
Did you like Red Sparrow?
I found that with James Newton Howard.
Yeah. Anyway, continuing.
Yeah, I was going to quickly say I found that with James Newton Howard. Sometimes he'll come out with a score that you think goes your way, and you think, "Wow, this is great." As you say, it's full of wonderful themes, and then you listen to the next couple, and you think, has he lost it, or has he just wasn't given enough kind of input as to what they wanted, and you just think, well, maybe he's, and then another score will come along and think, oh, he's back, he's firing on all cylinders again, then it'll drop off, kind of goes in ebbs and flows, but just waiting for the next good one, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the quality is bad. I mean, with some of the smaller scores that he writes, like the News of the World and the Hidden Life, are fine. Like Nightcrawler is one that doesn't really interest me that much, but yeah, there's other points where you're like, oh, like the Bourne score that he wrote. It's like, oh, geez, that's not very good. But yeah, I'm not sure where I'm going with that, but anyway, and I'm sorry, Gigawatts. I know you like Nightcrawler. I think the film is superb. But maybe I should get back and listen to that score again. So, but yeah, I mean, look, all that I'm talking about James Newton Howard, and I think we might have brought it up on an earlier broadcast, but I mean, the fact that he's scoring Willow is one of the most exciting things I've heard all year. And he's bringing in one of his young assistants to help score the series as well. I wish it was Chris Bacon, who, if you've never heard Source Code, my goodness, what a score. And so he's a James Newton Howard protege. But I mean, the fact that he's on Willow, I hope I'm pretty sure that he's going to knock that one out of the park. And but it was interesting that he scored that ILM documentary that Lawrence Kasdan directed. Nothing particularly memorable, but it's interesting that he scored that. So I'm glad that kind of collaboration is still. I wish Lawrence Kasdan would do more now.
What about The Fugitive?
A classic, I would say.
I saw him, James Newton Howard. He gave an interview. He was talking about that film, and he said, I don't think I was the person who should score this film. I think the only person that could have scored this film was Jerry Goldsmith. True.
And it sounds like Goldsmith at times. But, and this was a few years ago. I think it was at the time when The Fugitive was being released, and Dan Goldwasser mentioned, I think maybe either in the press release or just online, that The Fugitive is one of the most revolutionary, important, and inspiring score. Not inspiring. What's the other word I'm looking for? Influential score of the 90s. And I'm like, get out. What are you talking about? But then you listen to some of the modern action scores of that time, and holy cow, there's a lot of Fugitive in modern scores. And I'm talking about the Zimmer stuff. I'm talking about, like, one that comes to mind is John Debney's Sudden Death. It's like The Fugitive 2. And so there are so many elements that come into modern scoring in the 90s that come off the back of The Fugitive. And I was like, oh, well, I guess Dan was right. It really did influence a lot of the way that action scores were being written in the 90s, which I thought was very fascinating. But James Newton Howard has said that, his action scoring is pretty much modeled after what Jerry Goldsmith would do.
What about Collateral? Because to me, vastly different.
Yeah, I haven't listened to that score in forever. I saw the film once, which I thought was amazing, but it never really made an impression. What about you, Ian?
To tell you the truth, I can't really. I enjoyed the film, but I can't really remember the music in the film. Maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing. But I listened to the music in the film. I couldn't really give you of it, but I loved the film, so it must have worked to a certain degree. But it just wasn't that memorable for me to go, "Oh yeah, I loved his score."
You mentioned Red Sparrow earlier, and that was another one of his, I think, is just as great scores. The fact that he was writing a ballet, he had to write a ballet. He had to bookend the film with ballet music that also served as film score. I think is great. I love it when composers are able to do that, much like Victor Reyes's Grand Piano. It's a classical piece that also serves as a dramatic score, and I think that's an incredible accomplishment if you can do it right. Another score, though, I wanted to bring up was The Water Horse, Legend of the Deep, and I think many people have slept on that one, especially when it came out in 2007. It's a delightful children's film. I think it's about the Loch Ness Monster. And but I'll tell you, like, there was a if you wanted to hear what James Newton Howard, kind of the action scoring that he was writing, in the 90s and in the early 2000s, he injects all of that greatness into this 13-minute sequence at the end. Now, unfortunately, the album separates, I think, those 5 to 6 cues, into separate tracks, which is just so weird. But it's a 13-minute piece, and it is absolutely glorious. And I'm going to see if I can read the track name. So if anybody that has the album or doesn't, or wants to listen to it on Spotify, if you can listen to it there, it starts with "There's No Monster" and ends with the cue "End of the Story," and it is just wonderful. It has all of those wonderful highs of a James Newton Howard score. Like, it has all that great meaty action, but then can just explode into this wonderful spine tingling cymbal crash with huge orchestra, and it just, all the feels are there. So if you can find Water Horse, The Legend of the Deep, I think you'll really enjoy it, especially those that want to hear kind of James Newton Howard in that 90s, early 2000s sound. It was a wonderful score.
Gigawatt brings up Dave, which is quite the charming, cute score. It's got a lot of heart to it, I think.
I remember when La La Land was going to release the expanded release of that one, I'm like, what? Who asked for this? Like, I never thought in a million years you'd be like, oh, the Dave Deluxe Edition. But you're right. It's a delightful score. It really is. Yeah.
Lady in the Water.
Mm-hmm.
He's done most every M. Night Shyamalan film, hasn't he?
He did up until After Earth. That was the last one he did.
Why'd he stop? Do we know?
Yeah, Shyamalan's career was like, it took a nosedive, and then he was writing and producing smaller movies. And I'm going to assume, I don't know why, but that, James Newton Howard was too expensive to hire for these movies. But then I thought, like, after Split, I thought, okay, well, now he can start getting into bigger projects, and he'd probably be able to afford James Newton Howard, but he didn't bring him back for Glass. Now, I don't know what their relationship was like. I've read some interviews where, they would clash on something like Signs, where I think M. Night was talking about not having any music.
Yeah, which sounds stupid.
Yeah, it does. And then, of course, James Newton Howard was right. I mean, he just wrote one of the greatest scores ever composed. And so, but he just really was the best part of a M. Night Shyamalan film after Signs. The Village surprisingly got an Oscar nomination, even though that film was panned. Lady in the Water was a joke of a film, but it's another score that I didn't really like, with the exception of that last cue, the Great Eatlin. But I guess maybe the film also hampered my enjoyment, which doesn't happen too often, but it was such a slog to get through. And then you have, The Happening and After Earth, which is terrible. And then even After Earth almost seems like it wasn't the best effort. James Newton Howard really didn't put his best effort forward. And maybe I don't know, maybe James Newton Howard's just done with scoring horrible movies. Look, I know that there are M. Night Shyamalan fans out there, huge fans that will just defend everything he's done. Oh, and then there's The Last Airbender. Holy smokes! I mean, you talk about a film that's like just a god awful movie with one of the most.
First trailer though, that was awesome.
Oh, it was, but has one of the most inspired scores, and that's another grower for me, where I thought there was a missed opportunity there for just a great big leitmotivic score, but Howard was using more instrumentation and orchestration rather than melody to create those sort of leitmotifs. But I know some that consider that his best score, and also I think that album is worth a fortune online. And but yeah, there's a point where, I don't know, as a composer, you're just like one bad movie after another. And how do you just keep on doing that and collaborating with the same person, knowing that the next movie is going to just absolutely suck? And so I don't know. It's just those scores, and the thing is, those films inspired some of the best music that James Newton Howard has ever written. So it's, yeah.
Victor says The Village is solely carried by the Howards, Bryce Dallas, and James Newton. Valid point.
Yeah, true. What do you think, Ian?
Do you know what? I've never seen The Village.
I think you should.
It's a good film.
Okay.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen the other three, though. Like, you've seen Sixth Sense and Unbreakable and Signs, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I don't want to ruin anything for you, but then you start understanding kind of why Shyamalan's career starts to tank after that, and then why Lady in the Water is so laughable. But once you finish watching those, come back, because I do want to talk about. I would like to talk about him, and what a career that gets early highlights and so much fame can actually come back and just absolutely destroy a person and a filmmaker. So but I'd like you should see all those movies. I mean, have you seen The Happening?
I haven't.
I have. Do you know what? I've seen it once. I can't really remember much about it apart from Nature Fights Back. And I remember people chucking themselves off buildings. I need to revisit that. That's all I remember.
The premise is, I think portions of the premise is great, but the execution is just, you just wonder how. There's one point where I think there's a whole group of them together out in the field, and I couldn't imagine what it was like to be an actor being directed by Shyamalan at that point and saying, "Here are your lines, and you have to say these lines." They must have been just dumbfounded by what they were being handed and what they were doing, because, yeah. Anyway, it's one of the Happening, I think, is one of the greatest comedies of all time. I've never laughed so hard.
Was it a comedy? I thought it was supposed to be a drama.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, what other
Daniel, is that why you sent me that score, just to get rid of it?
No, if I sent it to you, I probably had 2 or 3 copies of it because they just showed up at the house.
Okay.
From making large purchases on eBay, and it's like, well, hey, I got a spare, so share. Right.
So do you guys have like an all-time favorite James? Like mine is Signs, obviously, but I mean, besides Signs, I could probably list a couple more as my all-time favorite. But like, do you guys like go like, here's the best thing he's ever written?
I think you know what my answer would be.
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
That was John Williams.
All right. What is your answer?
I was gonna wait for Ian.
Oh, okay.
I do, and it's Waterworld for me every time.
Okay.
I just love that score.
That is very good.
Enough said.
And again, an incredible effort for a replacement score. So
Absolutely.
I'm gonna go with Aaron Copland for the win. I mean Wyatt Earp.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know I feel like I'm predictable. If it's Copeland-esque, it's probably going to be good chance of being the winning.
Oh, that's
thing for
interesting.
me.
That is interesting. So I mean, do you? And we're gonna get off the James and Howe for a bit. So like when you hear like Copeland, Lincoln Portrait inspired cues from John Williams, especially in Saving Private Ryan, do you lean towards that and go, man, that's just greatness? Or just like that that resonates with you more so than anything else?
It just speaks to me as an American, as an American.
But
like the spirit of American music to me is like Aaron Copland, or if you sound like Aaron Copland, like an American Tale 2, if Iowa goes west, all damn day, baby.
I was gonna bring that one up too. I was like,
all day. I listen to that all day, every day. The Cowboys, I think I've mentioned the Cowboys once or twice, all damn day, every day. Just all day. So.
Yeah, and I think I'm very similar. I mean, I remember just recently Peter Boyer came out with his new album, and he mentioned that, what's your style of music? And he answered, he's like, my style of music is American classical. It's Aaron Copland, John Williams, and Leonard Bernstein. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably much where I gravitate to. That's that particular sound. I mean, that's why I love Field of Dreams so much. I mean, it's part of why I like it so much. You're sideways, Ian. Oh, we lost him. Yeah, the Aaron Copland sound is probably what I would gravitate towards, especially because it was introduced to me by John Williams. Like his Smallville music in Superman. That's it.
That's the Leaving Home track.
Yeah.
That makes that entire film. That everything hangs on that one track.
Yeah. And so that kind of, that warm American sound is kind of what I go to as well, which is interesting. But yeah, Wyatt Earp,
because you're not American, you're Canadian.
Right. So I don't know what the hell the Canadian sound is.
Yeah.
We got a whole smorgasbord of different styles here.
But you have the West in Canada too.
Oh yeah, Alberta's country music, and out east is Celtic.
Yeah.
And but we have our own. I don't think we have our own style. I don't think there's anything that could say it's Canadiana. We just steal from everybody else. But yeah, I don't think we have a particular sound that would say, yeah, that represents Canadian. That, like, much like you listen to Copeland and you're like, oh, that's America. Absolutely, that is. So yeah, I don't think we have a Canadian composer that you'd like go to and go, there's the Canadiana sound. I think there is.
You do have all the best comedians, though.
We have some pretty good comedians. Yeah.
You got all the hockey players.
We've got many, 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 many good hockey players. Yes. Many. But man, There's a lot of great ones all around the world now, even in America. You guys got the best women's hockey team for sure, I think.
Do we?
No, they're very good. They're very, very good. Yeah. So, Grand Canyon. That's interesting. That's interesting. Again, that's one that I don't think I have listened to all the way straight through. And I mean, I always go and listen to that fanfare, which is freaking amazing. But I'm gonna have to revisit that.
It's pretty electronic.
I don't even think I've seen the movie.
The Grand Canyon doesn't come into like the last 5 seconds of the film.
And that's why the fanfare is out there so big.
I guess they did you know what the movie's about? It's about a couple different people in LA, and they're just like living life in LA. You know, one guy gets shot and mugged, and someone finds a baby while running down to the park, and they bring it home, and there's an earthquake, and the guy's having an affair on his wife, and the guy's a tow truck driver, and he meets this girl, and anyways, they all take a trip at the end to go to the Grand Canyon together to realize what life is all about.
Okay. Yes, there is "O Canada" in Danny Elfman's Oz score, and that annoyed me to no end when I heard that. I can't listen to that score anymore.
What did they have in that score?
So if you listen to the main melody, you can hear "O Canada"
from South Park.
No, in Oz.
But isn't that song also in the South Park movie? Like,
there's "Blame Canada."
Oh, "Blame Canada." Okay.
Yeah, Blame Canada is not a Canadian song.
Retro Reels says there is a James Newton Howard interview on the new Flatliners 4K, which he just reviewed on his channel. Y'all check it out and thumbs up it.
Flatliners is yeah, that might be the holiest of holy grails for James Newton Howard scores, I think.
Pretty Woman, maybe. Never got released for Pretty Woman either.
Right, but I think Flatliners is a better score. I think people are just dying to get Flatliners, like an official release, because there's so many bootlegs out there.
Imports, Daniel.
Imports.
I have one of those imports. It says it's the recording sessions, and it's not a good listening experience. It's just all chopped up, and nothing has a name on it, and it's the music, but it's not an enjoyable listening experience.
Have you guys actually? You were talking about our experiences with James Newton Howard, and I didn't know he scored this. I think when I saw the film in high school, I wasn't really paying attention. I mean, I love film music, but I wasn't really paying attention to who was scoring things. But I got to see The Man in the Moon. My English lit teacher decided to show it to us one day, and I'm not sure. I forget why, but it's a wonderful film, and I actually revisited it earlier this year just to make sure that I remember it being as good as it was, and that's the film debut of God, it doesn't work. You guys are all yelling at me right now. Reese Witherspoon. She's incredible in this film. Came out in 1991. And it just has, it's like a small town America sound. Beautiful violin theme. It's a heartbreaking score, and the score was released. And if you don't have it, I highly recommend you pick it up. It's just a lovely early dramatic score by James Newton Howard. But I remember the music making an impression on me when I first saw it. So I was thinking grade 12 or 13. So 16, 17 years old when I first heard it. And so then when I finally found the album, it was so, I just, the images of the film just kind of came back, and it's a really well-made movie with a really, really, really good dramatic score by James Newton Howard. So if you can pick that one up, I highly recommend you do. Just the end credit cue is just beautiful as well. But I mean, like I said, it's a coming of age tale. It's a heartbreaking story, but I for some reason just love those, small town, even it doesn't have to be small town America, but just those kind of like small town films. Those personal stories are always really great to watch. So this one's another good one.
Interestingly, 1991 was quite a busy year for him. Just looking at his list there: King Ralph, Guilty by Suspicion, Dying Young, The Man in the Moon. But further on down, The Prince of Tides,
which is fabulous.
Academy Award nomination.
Barry. Yeah. So,
yeah, those are a lot of scores that not too many people
John Barry
talk about.
The theme. Yeah. But John Barry later used some music he wrote for his Moviola album.
That's right.
Called Moviola. It was his kind of main theme to The Prince of Tides.
Another score that kind of goes off the beaten path and explores jazz is Glenn Ross.
That's very jazzy, I thought. Yeah.
But does it just emote the perfect atmosphere for that movie. And that's another one of those films where you just can't put it on a list. It just belongs on its own tier. It was a play first, but every single word, line in that screenplay is utterly brilliant, and that entire film is just a masterstroke. And it's too bad it didn't get more attention, because I think it's about as perfect of a film as you're ever going to see. But the score it's just oozing with that kind of jazzy film noir sound. And it's not very long, but again, it's another album. If you can get it, it just puts you in this specific mood. Just sit back in a comfy chair and get a good, drink and close your eyes and turn down the lights. And it's so wonderful. But that film is, if you've never seen the movie, I highly recommend you do. It's, there's only a few changes that were made from the play to the film, especially the Alec Baldwin character. And Alec Baldwin could have easily won an Academy Award just for that. I think it was like 9 minutes alone. But it's so well shot. It's so well directed. It's so well acted. So well written. Check it out. Wonderful. I could watch that on repeat. Jack Lemmon is amazing. And we don't want to talk about Kevin Spacey, but that's one of Kevin Spacey's earlier career films, and he's great in it as well. And Pacino just, chewing up everything that he could and can. He drops some incredible curse words near the end of the film, and the way that he says them, it's so Al Pacino. Check it out. But yeah, the score, it's very, very, very short, but so good.
Yeah, with Wikipedia here says that it's Wikipedia anyway. It says just over 16 minutes of score on the track. So
yeah, but it's just great. It's great, and if you like jazz, it's wonderful. I'm trying to think what else I could highlight.
What about The Devil's Advocate?
Ooh. I don't know. Ian, you want to go first?
I think Ian's camera's freezing up.
It's years since I've seen The Devil's Advocate. Is it?
You're just on you're on a delay.
Yeah, I apologize for earlier on. I don't know what happened there. Oh, can you hear and see me?
Yeah. I think when we ask a question, it takes about 5 seconds for you to hear it. So.
Okay.
Thank you, praise. There.
Yeah. Years since I've seen the Devil's Advocate. No, I was just listening.
What about the score? I think we might have lost them.
I was having issues with my camera the other day. It eventually corrects itself.
Well, Devil's Advocate, one, the movie surprised me. And I think any film that is a dramatic film with Keanu Reeves in it that is actually good surprises me. It's so tough to watch him and take him seriously in a seriously dramatic role. He can be good, but it's like Keanu Reeves is a lawyer? Really? But besides that, I mean, yeah, and then like, I mean, I'm trying to wonder whether what Al Pacino was thinking. He's like, I gotta act in, across from
I
this
get a
guy.
paycheck.
Yeah. But Pacino is Pacino. He's so good. But the score, holy cow.
Balls to walls, baby.
Wow. There is some incredible orchestral choral writing in there that just is unbelievable. And again, when you talk about writing, that final speech from Pacino is pretty powerful stuff. And so I really like the movie, and that's an early Charlize Theron role.
Mm-hmm.
And but the score it's something else. It really elevates the drama. I'm trying to think of that one cue that he wrote. It's one of, I don't know the name of it. It's one of my favorites. Fire. Yeah. The cue Fire. It's like 90 seconds long. Just enormous. And the lovemaking. Oh, right. The lovemaking. Holy smokes. Totally forgot about that cue. That is almost Basic Instinct quality, I think. Just the way that he scores kind of sexuality and it's really telling you something else, but it almost sounds like musical sex, just lustful. And it's you don't have too many, like many composers write, let's say, like a love theme or whatever, but there's just something about the way Goldsmith scored, sex scenes, and then especially this lovemaking scene in Devil's Advocate, which is something completely different, but there's just more kind of meat to the bones of that cue that really wants to express itself and say something dramatically. And it's one of, I think, James Newton Howard's best cues of all time. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah. Blood Diamond.
Yeah, that's more of the kind of modern percussive heavy James Newton Howard that I don't really go for, but I probably have to give it another listen. I love the movie.
I adore Blood Diamond,
but I'm going to give Blood Diamond another go. And I probably haven't heard it since the film came out, so my description of it could totally be off, but I think that's what I remember. But I'm gonna give it another shot based on what you just said. So that'll go on my list.
The London track was used by, was it British Airways? Did they use that in a commercial? I know some airlines used it in a commercial. Yeah, that London track got a lot of play on what I call, like the secondary market, where people pick it up for commercials. And
I'm gonna have to give that a go then.
I've always liked African type music.
Okay.
And Blood Diamond kind of straddles. It's got a healthy dose of the African music, and it sounds like a good action adventure film score at the same time in certain points.
Well, I'm gonna have to give that another go. It's gonna be on the list. I'm gonna write that down. Another one that I really do want to talk about, and I think it's another one that I think some people slept on. I know that in kind of the deeper film music circles, this one was praised quite a bit, but there were others where there's like, this is just kind of James Newton Howard going through the motions. But I couldn't disagree more, especially when you hear a cue like, Let 'Em Buck from Hidalgo. Hidalgo is, it goes back to that action adventure sound that we kind of got used to from James Newton Howard, but with that really deep emotional connection. And he really scored that relationship between Viggo Mortensen and Hidalgo perfectly. But those last three cues, during that last leg of the race, just spectacular stuff. But there's also some wonderful kind of like swashbuckling music, but it's just, there's so much heart to it. And that's where some scores just completely missed the boat. Just digging in and finding the heart of the story and bringing that out in the music. And if you can do that and do that well without making it schmaltzy, then I think you're doing a good job as a film composer. And I think James Newton Howard does that so well. Like even for a film like The Postman, which is such a self-indulgent film by Kevin Costner, again, much like what Lady in the Water is for M. Night Shyamalan, but even even that last cue when in The Postman, where the statue is unveiled and James Newton Howard's just ramping it up with his music, it doesn't seem, it seems genuine, and without feeling like complete absolute cheeseball and cornball, although some people probably take it that way. But I think James Newton Howard's trying to be as earnest as possible with his music. And so I think he does the same thing with Hidalgo. Hidalgo is just it's based on a true story, but like hardly any of it actually happened. But those last three cues on Hidalgo, I remember listening to that album going, wow, this is the James Newton Howard I love. And it was one of my favorite scores of that year. And I go back to that often, and it's got a great recording by Sean Murphy as well, who did a lot of James Newton Howard's scores. And I'm not sure whether he's still recording with him or not. I don't think he is, but like Wyatt Earp sounds wonderful. The Disney trilogy of Dinosaur and Atlantis and Treasure Planet. Treasure Planet, I think, is also highly underrated. But I think those three, I call them the Disney trilogy. I mean, the fact that James Newton Howard didn't even come back from those experiences with even one single solitary Oscar nomination is a tragedy. So yeah, I went all over the place with that one, but Hidalgo, get it. It's wonderful. And go see the movie. It's a lot of fun.
So it's a very, very enjoyable movie, and it's family friendly for all ages too, which is something you cannot say very often.
That's very true. Very, very true. Have you heard Hidalgo, Ian?
I have, and I have seen the film, and I thoroughly enjoyed both. It's just a wonderfully old-fashioned film, adventure, and I love the music as well. So yeah.
Oh, by the way, your video sounds great. You're back in time with us now.
Yeah, I apologize. I had no idea what happened. I changed over to the iPad now, so we should be okay. So apologies for that.
No worries. Just wanted to make sure that you were still here.
Yeah,
still here.
We've all had issues with live streams before. It's nothing new. It's one of those things. And
I hate to do this, but is there a James Newton Howard score where you're just like, nope, that one did absolutely nothing for me? Or is there one that maybe we've discussed here where you're like, wow, you really like that, but I couldn't stand it?
Signs. I mean, it's just horrible. It's like three notes. It's like, what the hell, people?
Yeah, the one for me is the one I've already showed. It was his Bourne score, Bourne Legacy, was it?
Mm-hmm.
I was so disappointed. I saw James Newton Howard attached to it, and it's a Bourne spin-off. I thought, oh, this could be good, and it was just meh. MEH, meh.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I tried listening to Guilt by Suspicion, and I was just like, I'm just not feeling this. And for some reason, I always want to assign James Horner to that film. I don't know why, but in my mind, it's like, oh, James Horner did that film. I'm like, no, he didn't do that film. It's James Newton Howard. But I still, like, even today when I was, prepping for the show, I'm like, that's James Horner. Like, no, it's not. It's James Newton Howard. I don't know why, but I just keep wanting to put James Horner on that.
That's interesting. Here's one that I think is completely forgotten for a reason. It was the Nanny McPhee sequel.
There was a sequel to that?
Yeah, I think it was called Nanny McPhee and the Big Bang, something like that. And correct me if I'm wrong, and I can't listen to it right now, or else but I'm pretty sure there's some lifted material from Independence Day in that score. I think I could be wrong, but anyway, that was one that should have been amazing. And I really like Patrick Doyle's original score for the first film. I thought it was wonderful. But this one is like, what the heck is going on here? It's so incoherent that you're like, I mean, this is another one of those projects where you're like, man, he should have knocked this thing out of the park. But he didn't. So that's probably my one for like, I don't really like that score very much. And there aren't too many where I'm like, oh, that was horrible. And I don't think it's particularly horrible. It's just so not memorable. It makes no impact whatsoever. And I've listened to it once. And but you know what I might do is let you guys discuss it amongst yourselves. And I see if I can find that cue that might be the Independence Day one. I think it could be, or it's something else. I know that there's something in there where it's like, that's not James Newton Howard, that's somebody else, and it's so out of place. But yeah, it's not one you need to buy. At least I don't think so.
Unless you're a completist.
Yes, for sure. But I'm gonna go see if I can listen to a cue. So I'll be right back.
I think there's a danger when you're saying, is there a score you don't like? That you've listened to it away from the film and you don't like the music. But again, if you see it with the film, it might work with the film. So it's two different things. It might be great for the film, but
yeah,
as a listening experience,
it's like, I like Planet of the Apes. I can't listen to it on CD. I just can't.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. There's going to be quite a few scores like that, though, unfortunately. But a lot of people equate that it's bad film music if it can't be listened to on its own, which is not strictly true. It's not designed to be listened on its own. I think composers always say, it's a bonus if it can be, but it's designed to be to go hand in hand with the film itself. So
I wouldn't say Planet of the Apes is bad film score. It's just not a film score to listen to outside of the film.
I agree. Yeah, it's tough to listen. It's tough to understand what a composer was doing just by listening to it. It's on its own. So, I mean, I probably would have to see this movie to see what James Newton Howard is doing. By the way, I do really like the end title suite. It's pretty neat. It's got some saxophone, really interesting orchestration. It's a lot of fun. But there is a quote of Independence Day in a track called Leaps of Faith. It's just so weird to hear it. It's a and it's right
That's
there.
Independence Day. Yep.
Yeah, it's Independence Day, and I'm like, oh no.
Is it kind of an in joke or something? Or
and I don't know, and it could be, and if it is, then I'm like, I apologize profusely.
Have you seen the movie?
I have not seen the movie.
Okay.
No. But there's a track. I mean, if you want one track from the album, it's called Animated Titles. And it's 3 minutes long, and I'm like, that was fun. But it's a super long album, really, really long album. It's 60 minutes long, and for something like that, and a lot of short cues, and some of them there's some long cues, but it's just a lot of, it just doesn't really flow.
About Michael Clayton.
I really liked the movie. I really like the movie a lot. But the score, I couldn't tell you anything about it. So I will put Michael Clayton on the list as something I need to revisit.
And while you were out, we were discussing Blood Diamond. Do you have any thoughts, feelings, or anything for Blood Diamond?
Again, I enjoyed the film. It's years since I've seen the film, and I remember the music was fairly effective in the film, but it was one of those scores that I didn't pursue after I'd seen the film. So yeah, I would have to revisit it again. Really, I mean, I've got it on Blu-ray somewhere, so I'll have to revisit it again and see if my opinion has changed of the music. Again, when did that come out? Was it early 2000s or mid 2000s?
7?
Yeah, it's a while ago. So it's probably been 10 years since I've seen it. So it's something I need to revisit. Because my tastes and my attitudes to music have been changing over the years.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to a lot of stuff now that I wouldn't have listened to or enjoyed years ago. So that's probably worth revisiting for me.
David also had he seconds the Michael Clayton as a good film.
Here's has James Newton Howard written anything outside of film music?
Yes.
Besides working with like Elton John and things of that sort, but is there any classical works of his? Okay. Yes.
I Would Plant a Tree is a symphony. It was performed somewhere in California, if I remember correctly. And he did, I thought I wrote it down. Well, when he was in a rock band, he was with the Mama Lions. He's got 2 albums. He was with them. James Newton Howard and Friends is an album that came out in 82. I bet Eric doesn't know this, but he wrote one piece of music for a 1984 science fiction film called Dune.
Did he?
Did. He wrote one piece of music.
Or co-wrote, maybe.
Or co-wrote.
It says Howard co-wrote Q Trip to Arrakis.
Yep.
Oh. Interesting.
He wrote the theme for Dante's Peak, but not the score.
Correct. He also wrote the theme for Liar Liar.
Yeah. I think it was a violin concerto that he did.
Huh.
Or something for a string quartet. I thought I wrote it down, but I'm not seeing it in my notes. I apologize for that, people. But he did do the I Would Plant a Tree symphony.
Has that been released?
That I'm not sure. Skirwinkle says it was a violin concerto. Okay.
And so do we know if any of these have been... So James Newton Howard violin concerto. Ooh, I'm interested in hearing... Oh, there. It's on YouTube. And it's on Amazon Music. James Newton Howard, Aaron J. Kearns, violin concertos.
Skirwinkle says it's available on compact disc.
The violin concerto. There's a printing error on the back of the album. So movement number 1 is nothing. It's blank. But it looks like it's a lengthy piece. All right, I'm going to go look for that. That's fascinating. Does it now? My question to you, though, and so have you heard it, Daniel?
I haven't. No.
No.
So
I haven't heard it either.
does it? So is it like a John Williams classical piece where he's kind of deviating away from his film music and doing a whole bunch of different stuff that you might not normally hear from John Williams, or does it sound like? Does it sound like James Newton Howard? And that means, does it sound like James Newton Howard? Like, is it a melodic thing, or is it more atonal, or is it like, or does he try to stretch the instrument as much as John Williams tries to do with Sophie Mutter? You know, like every single range and thing you can do with the violin, he threw into that violin concerto number 2.
Can you
Yeah.
just take her violin and hit her over the head with it?
Yeah.
Not encouraging violence towards anyone. I'm just, talking like cartoon land,
Oh, I've just thought of a question to ask John Williams if we ever got the chance. And the question would be, and Sophie Mutter, why?
Yeah, she sent him some chocolate chip cookies for Christmas, and I'm like, dude, if that's all it takes, I will send you all the chocolate chip cookies.
I think we are in minority when it comes down to Mutter. I also think that she had a relationship with, wasn't she married to Andre Previn?
Andre Previn.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's your connection. But I think that the classical world really, really likes her. And I think that she is considered by most to be like one of the best violinists.
That's not the soundtrack world, though.
Well, I mean, I've seen some people who there was a guy who I know, and has mentioned that he's not listening to much film music these days, but was very much interested in the John Williams, Sophie Mutter albums, and now prefers the arrangements that are on those albums to the original arrangements. So he would go. So if instead of listening to, let's say, Harry Potter, Hedwig's theme, he'll go for the Mutter version now instead of the original recording, or Long Goodbye. Although, I mean, that was always a score that had many different variations and is, I think, is meant to be explored by different instruments and different bands and in different ways. So, but yeah, I mean, I know there are people that just absolutely love her stuff and the way it's, but my biggest problem is some of the writing, and some, it just feels like a lot of noodling with no direction. And of course the sound that Mutter is producing from her instrument, but I think we've explored that a million times over. But yeah, I think that Williams' ear is, and that's what he likes. That's what he wants. And I mean, we have to respect that. But I don't have to listen to it. And I mean, probably 10 years from now, when Williams is not with us anymore, I will maybe appreciate it a lot more. And that's probably going to happen because I go back and listen to James Horner's material, and I have a bigger appreciation for his music than I did when he was alive. And I loved his stuff. I mean, he's on my Mount Rushmore of composers, but it hits harder now. Maybe due to the circumstances of the way he passed away, but and maybe it was because of Jason Drury's 3-part audio documentary, which I still think is one of the finest things that he has ever done. And if you haven't heard that, and I don't mean it to be a promotion for my radio show, and Jason Drury,
my friend,
but Drury did this before he had any sort of association with cinematic sound. He produced this for another radio station, and they basically screwed him over. And so then he came to me and said, "Hey, can you help, produce it or put it online so that, it has a place to live?" And I said, absolutely. I was interviewed for it as well, but we had not had the relationship that we have now where, he's producing stuff for me. So it wasn't specifically produced for Cinematic Sound Radio. Anyway, that's the disclaimer. But I've listened back to that show every year since his death, on the day that he, on his birthday, sorry, not the day that he died, on his birthday, as a way of just kind of like, instead of just listening to his stuff, I go back and listen to that and just listen to the fans talking about his music. And then anytime that, a piece comes on, it just hits that much more, it hits so much harder. And then to, like his flying music for the Horsemen aerobatic group, I just get chills listening to it. Now, when I first heard it, I thought, oh, that's a pretty solid piece of music from James Horner. But now, knowing his love for flight, and the way that he passed away, and just the passion behind it. So, I mean, again, that's a long answer to my explanation of maybe I'll one day be able to choke down the Sophie Mutter violin music, but right now it's not something that I want to experience anytime soon.
What about ER from James Newton Howard?
Yeah, it's a classic theme. Yeah, when it came out, I mean, that was all over the place. It's fun. I think I have a recording of it somewhere. It was on like a compilation album. I don't think I actually had the ER soundtrack, but there was a compilation album, I think through like Sonic Images. They did a television soundtrack album, which also had a wonderful theme for, remember the New Adventures of Superman, Lois and Clark, the New Adventures of Superman.
Jay Gruska.
Yes, that's right. Great theme. Yeah, great Superman theme. So, yeah.
You know, we were talking a few, well, it must have been a couple of months ago, about that Vaughan Williams. Was it the Chandos one?
Mm-hmm.
And I messaged you the other day saying I picked it up because it's still for £5 on the Chandos website. I did a bit of research, and you can buy them individually, but the cheapest I found, if you bought those 3 albums individually, would have been £42.
No way.
Yeah, and that's buying them new. I think you could maybe got them for maybe £35 if you're buying them secondhand. So I'm just wondering whether Chandos realise they're selling that for £5.
Yeah, I don't. Again, if nobody has it. I mean, this is what we're talking about. I mean, and it's probably the deal of the century. And it's this release, and it's beautifully put together too. But these are like monumental recordings of some of the best film music you will ever hear, including like Scott of the Antarctic, which I think is one of the greatest scores ever composed. But it's this £5, right?
Yeah.
And it comes in this little box, and all of the albums are in these little sleeves, but you also get, and this is what I wish was in the Gerhardt box set, you get all the booklets with all of the notes as they are in the CDs. It is, I'm dumbfounded that you can find this for $5 or £5. And if this is the way you start your Chandos collection, this is the perfect way of doing it. But then getting into, God, you got to that whole series is amazing. It's right up there with the Gerhardts, with the Bernsteins. I think I've said this a million times when we bring this up, but this little box set here is one of the greatest things ever. Wow. You can't, like I said, you can't buy them individually for that cheap.
No. And I have no idea why I went there. It must have been in the back of my mind. I thought, well, is it still for £5? Because you mentioned there'd been a sale on. I thought, well, it can't be. That was months and months ago. But no, everything else is like £10, £12, whatever. But that one box set is still £5. I think I paid £1.89 for shipping.
Yeah.
So
wonderful series, and I really like the way that they present the music. It's they treat film music as classical music. Like on the first volume, you're getting Scott of the Antarctic, Coastal Command, and The People's Land, but it feels like you're listening to a classical piece, like as if you start with a symphony, because Scott of the Antarctic, and this is a premiere recording of this specific version, is 41 minutes long. And then you get into Coastal Command, which almost seems like a concerto with 23 minutes. And then you get like a suite of The People's Land. And that's kind of the way classical music is structured. And they do something similar with Volume 2, 49th Parallels, 40 minutes long. The Dim Little Island, 7 minutes. And that gives you a break before you get into the England of Elizabeth, which is 24 minutes long. Now, not all of their albums are like this. Some of them do feel like compilation albums, like the Ron Goodwin album, I think is right up there as one of the best ones they've ever done. But there's a whole collection of beautiful themes on there, but other times you just have like they are structured like symphonies or concertos, and that's awesome. Like sometimes you're not getting the complete recordings, but they give you all the highlights that you need, and I love their work. I don't have all of the discs. I have most of them, and they're splendid, absolutely splendid. Highly recommended. But I mean, this set, I mean, go get it. Even if you're not a fan of this, just have it.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't know what, you know, who Ralph Vaughan Williams is, well, just do it. You will not regret it.
Absolutely. Another one, I didn't mention it, I got it cheaply. I've been looking for the Tadlow re-recording of the Vikings for a decent price for a while now. Amazon is selling it for 30 something odd pounds, and I just thought that's too much. And
it's not available through Tadlow's site?
Well, that's eventually I thought, well, why not go to Tadlow? So I went to Tadlow, and it was there for £15. So, which is their normal price. I thought, yeah. So I ordered that. So I don't know why I didn't look on there in the first place. So I ordered the Vikings and King of Kings.
Oh, great.
So
oh, you've got a wonderful week of listening coming up when those arrive.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wow. Yeah, man, the gifts that James Fitzpatrick gave us with that series, and I can't imagine how much money he threw into that to bring those scores to. There's such passion projects. That's the thing. I mean, most of the people who are put together re-recordings know they're not making their money back, but I just kind of wish that he was still doing it, especially at a time when fans are willing to add to like a Kickstarter, much like what Entrada's doing. Like, and I love what Entrada's doing because they're basically resurrecting the Tribute Film Classics series from the dead, but they're in collaboration with Tribute Film Classics, the people that worked there and crafted so many wonderful recordings for us. So first on Naxos and Marco Polo, and then on their own label. And now they're, you know, working with a major film music label like Entrada, who's done their own re-recordings and know how to finance them. But they're also reaching out to fans and saying, hey, you know, you really want these, you know, put up the money. And they are. And I just wish James Fitzpatrick was, I mean, I don't know. I don't know whether he's ill, he's sick, or he's just kind of fed up and had enough. But I just hope those Tadlow series don't die. I hope like somebody like Lee Phillips will pick up the mantle and continue that series. But I think there's a really great chance for us to get even more great re-recordings. I mean, those that are fans of re-recordings, there's many that are not. They would rather hear the originals, and they don't want to hear re-recordings or new recordings. But I love the new interpretations of these pieces. I love hearing them recorded with modern technology, and so I will always, if I can, at least throw a couple bucks to these people to help get their projects going. And so, I mean, anybody that's out there listening to this, I mean, I know that things can be tight, but the people like William Stromberg and John Morgan, you know, though they've done so much for us. And I'm so sad that Tribute Films Classics died. And I still think you can buy their albums. Even I think their website's still alive. So if you can purchase their album, they're beautiful. They are gorgeous. I think Jim Titus, I think, puts together all the artwork for them. They're wonderfully produced. I think they're all recorded in Moscow, who is a fabulous orchestra as well. So if you're familiar with what they did with Naxos and Marco Polo, they basically took that series and made it their own. And, you know, you get the Adventures of Don Juan, you get some great Herman recordings, the Prince and the Pauper by Eric Wolfgang Korngold. Splendid recordings. I really should do a show just dedicated to Tribute Film Classics. I think they did Mysterious Island. Not a fan of that score as a whole, but it sounds great. So, but yeah, I'm again a long-winded response to whatever we were talking about. But just I would encourage everybody here to just throw a few bucks towards these recordings if they're ever asked for. But I mean, Entrada, I want them to keep going. I want them to still. Their albums sound amazing. That whole the Black Patch, or at least they did for Jerry Goldsmith, was wonderful. So I think even if you're not a fan of the scores themselves, I would encourage you just to support them as much as you can.
Absolutely.
I keep thinking, how hard would it be to get a Kickstarter going for some unreleased John Williams scores?
Expensive. I mean, I could tell you how much it cost for the last release that they were doing. I mean, they were trying to do two scores, and I think they got their amount for the first one, and then it was like right at the last second, somebody pitched in a whole bunch of money to get the second one recorded. I mean, I don't know how much the license cost. I don't know how much. I mean, would John Williams have to approve it? But let me see.
And if you're talking about a movie from the 60s,
Right.
Would John Williams even have any say-so on that matter?
I don't know. I got two different email addresses here that I think I have access to the Kickstarter. I don't know where I put it, but I'll tell you how much it costs to do these Herman recordings. Kickstarter.
Daniel, were there any specific John Williams scores you were thinking of?
I really want the Rare Breed.
Okay. $60,000 to bring On Dangerous Ground and The Man Who Knew Too Much.
That's not a lot.
They got 511 backers. I mean, again, I don't know who's getting paid here and how much it costs for the restoration, how much it costs for the orchestra. I'm sure the orchestra is pretty expensive. Who's going to record it? They got Simon Rhodes to record the Goldsmith album, and it sounded amazing. But it was a smaller orchestra. It's still the Royal Scottish National Orchestra. That's where they're going to do it. But I mean, On Dangerous Ground and The Man Who Too Much are massive scores. So you're looking at $60,000 right now, American, to get something off the ground. And they still haven't locked down a recording date yet because the RSNO are very, very busy. So they're trying to get it recorded in November.
See, my thought is, you can just tell me if I'm just being like, I need to stop putting so much sugar in my tea every morning. But Boston Pops have the special needs concert this Christmas. I'm going to plan my trip around that. I'll go to the standard concert, the one night, special needs concert the next day. Every special needs concert, Keith Lockhart has come out afterwards to mix and mingle with people. And every time I've gotten a chance to talk to him, pretty sure he probably recognizes me. I'd be like, hey, look, here's just like 2 or 3 John Williams scores. They're back in the 60s. They've never been released. What is it going to take to get this started, just to get a re-recording done? And if he just blows me off, then he blows me off. Or maybe he'll say like, yeah, that's a good idea. I should think about it. What's your email address? Let's stay in touch. Let's make this happen. Come on. Let's make it happen.
I mean, I don't know whether Keith Lockhart would be the right person to do it, though. That's the only thing.
He knows John Williams. He's the only person I'll meet like twice a year who knows John Williams personally.
But would it fit as part of their repertoire for CD? Like if you said, here's the world premiere recording of The Rare Breed by John Williams, conducted by Keith Lockhart, whatever. I mean, first of all, you got to find the score if it's still around. I mean, just think about Superman the movie. When they recorded that, the score was lost and had to be completely reconstructed. So one, you got to find it where it is to get that done. The benefit, though, of let's say Roger Flagelson and Doug Fake and Stromberg and Morgan is, I mean, they're working with an established film music label. They've done all this before. And I'm not saying that I'm not saying that you can't. You'd have to surround yourself with the right people that can do it and do it properly. Would the Boston Pops do this? Maybe, but I think it would be like a project that you might want to pitch to, would you pitch it to a Robert Townsend?
I'd pitch it to anyone, he'll take a hit.
Yeah. So, I mean, Townsend's recording his own stuff right now, but I mean, is the rare breed something that would be like, that's going to be a big seller, or that's going to be something that's going to bring, let's say, 500 plus people in to back it. And then, like, would the rare breed, like, if you think about the rare breed, like the Boston Pops, I don't think has ever recorded a full score in its history. It's done really lengthy suites, but I don't think they've done an entire score. So, but anyway, no, but it's look, I think it's worth a shot. Again, I think it would be something that Tadlow would do, because they did record a suite from it, so they probably know where some of it is, right? James Fitzpatrick, Lee Phillips. If there's anybody, you might want to contact him. Contact Fitzpatrick and contact Lee Phillips. I mean, Lee Phillips has just done a successful campaign, recording some really early Goldsmith scores. So, but he's worked very closely with James Fitzpatrick, and it seems like he really wants to keep re-recordings going. Now, the Goldsmith stuff was very short, like they were 8-minute pieces, but he was able to bring those to life as world premiere recordings. So, but before we get any further, yeah, there's that question. I think we might have addressed this on an earlier episode, but I mean, are you guys, how familiar are you with the Tadlow catalog? Do you have it all? Do you have a lot? Is there anything that you would
few things
recommend as like, gotta have it?
We've been through quite a few of them before on the Batman show. Things like Ben-Hur. You mentioned King of Kings. That's which is why I've ordered that. What did you think of the El Cid? Did you think El Cid was worth it, or was that one of the? Is that, yeah?
I think it's the best thing they've ever done. Okay.
There's so many of them.
There is so many. I'm gonna try to condense it to 5, and I might not, but I'm gonna go through the list right now here. I think El Cid's at the top. When I did my re-recording show many years ago, it was on my list as like the top 10 of all time. This is the Prague Orchestra basically at the peak of their greatness. The recording is wonderful. Like, I think they finally figured out how to properly record at Smeky Studios in Prague. The performances are incredibly spirited. The on-track music is unbelievable. And it's a wonderful presentation. Now, there's 2 different versions. There's a 3 CD set and there's a 2 CD set. You can live with the 2 CD set. As for others that I would say, yeah, you should probably get it. And I hate to skip over some of these. Holy smokes. I'm going to say the Salamander. And the reason I say it is because it was a completely unreleased Jerry Goldsmith score. And I think they had to reconstruct this too. But it's a revelation. It's for a really bad movie. But I would say the Salamander is one. I would also say Conan the Destroyer. And the reason is that it, unlike Conan the Barbarian recording, which really doesn't add much to it, and I don't think it's a very good mix and or performance, to tell you the truth, Conan Destroyer just opens up that score like it's never been heard before. It was recorded with such a small orchestra for the original soundtrack recording, but this one it expands on it so much. It's so huge. The recording is beautiful, and on top of that, you get the Conan the Barbarian Sword and Sorcery Spectacular, which is essentially getting like Basil Polidoris' Conan 3 score. And that was completely re-recorded on that album as well. So that one, I would say, if you're a fan of Conan and Polidoris and you've heard that score before, you're going to hear it in a whole new light. Lawrence of Arabia, because this was a passion project for Fitzpatrick, he had recorded it previously, but he didn't like that recording. And he knew that when he got a chance to have, to get the money and the financing behind it and to do it right, and that they were going to do it right for Tadlow, then he re-recorded Lawrence of Arabia. And it is amazing. It has never sounded better. What it also includes on this release is a second disc, which contains numerous wonderfully performed additional Maurice Jarre suites. One of my favorites is Moon Over Parador. You also get the symphonic dance suite from The Magician of Lublin, and it's wonderful. And then a whole bunch of other stuff Solar Crisis is great. You get a suite from Prancer, Firefox. You get to hear Dead Poets Society, a couple of other bonus cues from Lawrence of Arabia. Really well produced soundtrack, just a wealth of music on there. I highly recommend that one.
That Lawrence of Arabia, by the way, is available for streaming on Apple Music as well.
Oh, good.
If you want to listen to it first.
Yes. And then there's a toss-up between, I'm going to say Taras Bulba. And the reason why I say Taras Bulba is Franz Waxman's probably my favorite Golden Age composer. But the thing about Taras Bulba, and much like Conan the Destroyer, much of what was released is from the re-recording of the score that was released at the time of the film's release. And it wasn't the original soundtrack recording, and it was a much reduced orchestra. It's still a fine album, if you could find it. I think Kritzerland re-released it and remixed that album, so it sounds a bit better. But if you're looking for a version that contains the actual full orchestration of Taras Bulba, then you probably want to pick this one up. And of course, it contains the Ride of Dubno, which is one of the classic pieces of music. But then there's a wonderful gypsy dance, Gypsy Camp. It's on fire. This track is just on fire. I cannot believe how fast they're playing. It's a virtuosic piece. And again, I cannot believe this is the City of Prague Philharmonic. Excuse me. A City of Prague Philharmonic Orchestra that I just really could not stand in the 90s, that I thought were just this poorly put together pickup orchestra that just was doing these compilation albums, and there wasn't any care in the world when they were recording them. It just seemed kind of flat. I mean, there were some pretty solid albums back when they started, but when you hear this album, you're like, man, this is a pro orchestra. These guys have finally got their stuff together, and they are doing it right. And so, yeah, I'm going to say El Cid, the Salamander, Conan the Destroyer, Lawrence of Arabia, and Taras Bulba. And as a honorable mention, I will go with Exodus, an Academy Award-winning score, and it sounds amazing. You also get some bonus tracks on the album, which includes a beautiful suite from QB7, a wonderful performance of the Schindler's List, the theme and remembrances. And then you get some beautiful renditions of Exodus at the end of it. The Rhapsody for Cello and Orchestra, beautiful. And then the concert overture of Exodus, another great one. So, yeah, I hope that helps. But I think you get those 5 or 6 albums is a great starting point, and then you can feel out whether you want to get the other ones, and the other ones are just as good.
I personally would add, just because I love it, I would add in there re-recording of the Blue Max, because that does come with a second CD of great stuff.
That's true.
The Mummy, it's got a suite of music from MacArthur. It's got music from The Final Conflict, The Omen 3. Yeah, just wonderful. And it's got, I've never heard a re. I think we've mentioned it before. I've never heard a re-recording of music from Inchon, which
You're right.
They've got a couple of tracks. They've got the main theme, which is brilliantly done, and I can't remember what the other one was, but again, just brilliant.
Yeah, I agree.
Let me highlight Bio Hawks. Probably say your name wrong, but he's got Wyatt Earp, Blood Diamond, Dinosaur, King Kong, and Hidalgo for his top. James Newton Howard. I'm guessing that's the top and not the bottom, because why would you put Wyatt Earp at the bottom? I don't know.
Yeah, there's just so many great James Newton Howard scores. I mean, that like, to conclude all of this, he's so good. You know what? I was thinking about this as well. He's not a composer where I think of like, who's your favorite composers? And for some reason, I seem to always forget mentioning him, even though I love so much of his music. And it's always like Williams, Goldsmith, Horner, Waxman, Korngold, Roja, Silvestri, Elfman, and it's like, well, who else is there? Oh, you're right. James Newton Howard's written so much great stuff, but it just seems to be, for some reason for me, just kind of like in the middle of the pack. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't write incredible music and he isn't one of my favorites. I just seem to just misplace his name all of the time, but he's written so many delightful scores that have entertained me for years, and makes me happy to be a film music fan when I listen to his material. He's just so good, and I just wish he would get more recognition. I wish he got more recognition for some of those early 90s, those 90s scores and those Disney scores, man, because he was on fire during that time. Just a wonderful gift that he's given us. Gifts, those scores, they're so good. Incredible guy.
And
is there one? Oh, sorry, I don't know. I was going to say, is there one particular track of his? If somebody said to you, put a gun to your head and say, choose a James Newton Howard track to take to your grave.
Yeah.
Choose now. Is there a particular track that comes to mind that if you were put up against the wall, that you would choose it and be happy with that track?
Yeah, instantly. And it's not from Signs.
Ooh,
it would
surprising.
be the end credits from Wyatt Earp. That thing rips. That thing that is a properly constructed end credit suite, and it contains all of the wonderful highlights and themes from that score, and it just flows so perfectly. I think it just encapsulates what's so great about James Newton Howard in under 5 minutes. So if I could listen to that over and over again and again, thank God we got the La La Land release and we got that end credit cue. It's so good. And I can remember getting the Wyatt Earp disc. I didn't get it when it was first released, and I had to purchase it at secondhand, and I spent a bit of money on it. But I remember holding that one going, man, I cannot believe I own this score. And then getting through that whole thing, the wagon chase. Oh, wow. Splendid stuff. But yeah, the end credit cue every day.
Daniel, do you have one?
Same answer.
Let's pick a second one then.
Oh, do you know what? Unfortunately, on my copy of the CD, I don't have that end credit suite. So
No, you don't. I'll have to send it to you.
So, but I'm going to have to choose one from my favorite score, and it would be Helen Frees the Mariner.
Brilliant.
If I'm putting this on, that's always the track I go to first before I listen to anything else. I just love that swashbuckling, adventurous, brilliant piece of music.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay,
so in second place, Daniel, go. What's your second favorite?
Second place would probably be closing credits from The Village.
Interesting. I'm gonna pick an M. Night Shyamalan, and it'll be The Hand of Fate 1 and 2, because they're 1Q, and it's 10 minutes of wow. That one Q might convert an atheist over to religion.
No, the one cue that I've been playing, I play music to patients in the ward that I work on in the hospital, and it's all film and TV music, funnily enough. But the one I've been playing a few times recently, because it's great. It's the end titles from Fantastic Beasts.
Oh wow!
To find them, just the kind of 2 minute of the kind of animated credits, and before it goes into school. It's just a great, adventurous, full-blooded, yay! Go out the cinema smiling kind of piece of music. It's just fantastic. So, yeah.
Before we end, and I don't know if you have one of these ones where you've heard a score and you absolutely can't stand it. You just don't get it. And then later on, you're like, what was I thinking? Like, it's really amazing. And the one score, there's one score that I tell the story all the time about Medicine Man, but there's another one, and it's James Newton Howard's Peter Pan. There was something off-putting about I think that drum machine that they had over top of one of the cues and over top of the main theme, and I was like, oh, this is gross. Why doesn't it sound like Dinosaur, or sound like Atlantis or Treasure Planet? What is this score? And so I dismissed it very early on, and then I came back to it, and it is a rip-roaring adventure score, again, with all of those wonderful James Newton Howard highlights that you want, that real depth, that emotion, the heart, again, able to capture the heart of a film in the story. And so that's one for me where couldn't stand it when I first heard it, and then finally came back and remedied that mistake.
I never disliked it. When I first saw the film and heard the music, the music just sounded a bit anachronistic to me initially. It didn't, but I didn't dismiss it. I thought, okay, yeah, it's a modern film. It's got this kind of modern stylized look to it. It kind of works. I didn't have the same feeling, but it grew on me over the years, it's just yeah, you're right. It is a fantastic score. It's a joyous score.
Joyous, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you, Daniel, anything?
I feel like there's scores I should probably revisit, like Glenn Ross. I didn't care for that, and Guilty by Suspicion. And some days it's just not the day for you to listen to something. And I haven't. They're not dead to me, but they're just like, yeah, they're there, but it's just not. But maybe another day, another mood. It'll strike me and change my mind. So I try to maintain an open mind. I don't like to be at that point where I'm like, nope, it's done, it's over, it's dead, forget it, we're done. Right. I try not to go there, except with the Kennedy Center. We're done with those bastards.
Well, let me tell you about the Glenn Ross. If it ever just kind of pisses down rain one night, nice thunderstorm, if you ever get that, then that's the time. You just kind of like dim the lights and put that thing on, and it will just create the absolute perfect atmosphere. And again, have you seen the movie?
No.
Watch the film. Again, it's not it really it's not like a traditional film score. It's just kind of, it's almost as if you've laid in some jazz music over top of specific scenes, transitions, and whatever.
I think that was my issue with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it just feels like natural jazz music, but it does create that mood, and the perfect mood. And so again, it doesn't feel like film music, but if you're interested in hearing some wonderful jazz from a composer that doesn't normally do that, give it a go. But yeah, wait for the rain.
Okay. Well, Ian, you got anything else to add before we sign off here?
No, I did listen to. It's not a James Newton Howard thing, but talking about Warning Shot last week, Jerry Goldsmith. I listened to the extra tracks.
Yeah,
I did like the Warning Shot score. By the way, quite funky, but yeah, they were great.
Wasn't that fun?
Yeah. So I managed to track down Warning Shot. That recording, the FSM one, and I managed to order a copy. It's on its way to me. So
that's great.
And it was a decent price as well. So
even better.
Quite happy with that. So
cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Curse you, Eric Woods.
Yeah. No, I'm glad I listened to it again. Like once we finished that show last week, I played it again. Utterly delightful.
Yeah.
I will say today's show has broadened my appreciation and interest in James Newton Howard, and it's given me new titles to seek out and listen to, and I hope everyone else has come away with the same sense. Because, like Eric said, he kind of gets lost in the shuffle. And Eric, you mentioned his name last week, and it's got we should talk about James Newton Howard. And normally we don't have a set topic of discussion here, but I thought, you know what, next week we should talk about James Newton Howard, make it a point. And I'm glad we did.
I like that we had a topic. I actually really like that. I mean, I like our kind of freewheeling discussions, but I think having just kind of something central that we can begin with and then maybe see where it goes. I think that was a really good idea. I got to kind of prepare for it a bit and really think about it. So
I listened to 2 hours of interviews with the man on YouTube this weekend, just trying to, because I didn't really know much about him. I had no idea he had the career. He played with Elton John. He had his own little group going on. He's done a lot of behind the scenes things back in the 80s for various rock singers. It was very interesting.
He definitely is an unsung great film composer. It doesn't get the credit that he deserves or that's due. And what is he, 70 now?
71.
Yeah.
71.
So I hope we got many more years, and I just hope that there are directors and projects out there that kind of will that leans towards his style, and then we can get more great scores like Atlantis and Dinosaur and Wyatt Earp and all of those sorts. And so hopefully we still have many more exciting years with James Newton Howard
and all of us.
Yeah.
Well, adopt, don't shop, everyone. Keep listening to great film scores. Wednesday night, doing Eight-Legged Freaks with Boomer. Have y'all seen that film?
I've seen bits and pieces of it, but man, that's a fun John Ottman score.
It is. I've never seen the film. I'll watch it tomorrow or
it's
tonight.
Ridiculous.
But I did find the film score to be very charming.
It is very, yes.
Yeah. Ian, have you listened to it?
I have listened to it. I've never seen the film though.
Do you want to come on, or would it be too late for you?
That will be too late for me, unfortunately.
Okay, I understand. And I'm sure Ian's got some surprise videos coming up, and we'll see all of y'all next week, if not Wednesday.